Unconsumed podcast. I'm here with my good friend, Brian Hyser, co-founder of 22 Health and Flood, which is a new SEO play that you have out there, and also Hyser Realty, which is kind of your foray into real estate. So, Brian, I've known you for, I want to say, 6, 7 years now, and
About there, yep.
Your journey has taken a few different turns, and it's kind of climaxing in this first roundabout the track. And I think the story is a killer because it involves that, it involves the breaking into the industry altogether. And then once you've done that, you've been able to find your way into other things. So
Right.
I'd love to hear like a little bit about, what you like, if you can describe for us what 22 Health is first, and then we'll backtrack into, how you kind of got into that.
So 22 Health is, a chiropractic and personal injury group.
Mm-hmm.
We have 4 locations here in Central Florida. Our focus is treating injury patients that have been involved in, major car accidents, work-related injuries, slip and falls, those types of things. And 22 Health came about because of the way that the model is in today's society of everybody is kind of a reactive type person.
Right.
What I mean by that is, they wait until they have an issue before they decide to go to a doctor or go see their primary care physician or whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we as chiropractors wanted, to kind of display that is kind of opposite. Be proactive, be prevention based. Don't wait until you have an injury or you start having pain to address it. That's the whole wellness paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, what we were taught as chiropractors going through school. But 22 Health stands for 22nd century healthcare. So our major revenue source obviously is the auto injury treatment of patients, but we do a lot of other things other than auto accidents to build our practice. So.
Right. And so 22 Health has been around for how many years?
We opened in November of 2013. So we're going on, our 5th year now?
5 years. Okay. So in the 5 years that this has been on my radar, it was one location. And now how many do you have?
Yeah, we currently have 4. We started in a small little physical therapy, 10 by 10 room. My partner and I, outside of Winter Park, grew out of that within about 6 months with our marketing and the strategies that we had and the relationships we had in the area. And then, moved over about, 5 miles down the road into our first, brand new facility in Altamont Springs. Within a year, we decided to kind of get into the east side of town and opened up our East Orlando, branch, and then went north into Orange City, and then we opened up an office in Oviedo. So, within 4 years, we've kind of expanded to that. We could have probably, opened up more, but the ways, with Florida and the laws in Florida when it comes to personal injury, things are always, every year could potentially be changing. And because of that, we kind of just stood where we were and just built kind of the platform or the foundation that we have. And then, if the law decides to kind of stay level, we'll expand from there at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a few cities, and for those that don't know, 22 Health is based out of the greater Orlando Metroplex area.
Beautiful area.
Beautiful area? I've heard that.
North of Disney, baby.
I've heard that mostly from you, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I do the same thing with Texas all the time. People are like, meh. I'm like, no. It's that good.
Yeah. It's just nice to have, the golf season all year round.
Yeah, well, especially if you golf like you do. I quit years ago. That's another story for another podcast.
Right.
So you have these 4 locations. And so what most people listening to this will think is like, oh, I've seen The Joint, or I've seen, specialized chiropractic chains in my area. And so they see those and they're everywhere. And so what I really love about your story is it's in the infancy of doing exactly that, I assume is the plan, right?
Yeah.
And so like, what kinds of things are you looking at in terms of saying, okay, so we got the one. I think the hardest part of this is what you described up front is getting out of that 10 by 10 doctor space.
Yep.
and then moving it to a larger space. And then that has to be successful. There's a ton of risk involved with, you know, owing the landlord money, or as I call it, working for the landlord and getting more location. And then to scale it out, which is the word that is on everyone's lips whenever they're talking about any business, is will this scale, and how much does it cost? What's our cost per acquisition of a customer? And I just think, like, you guys have got that. So
yeah, and we got there. I would say after our third location, the one that we opened up in Orange City, we kind of knew, you know, that we had some scalability. You know, we knew that, you know, what our cost per, you know, per patient would be. You know, we knew what, you know, what we could get with our marketing strategies. You know, and we decided to open up Oviedo, kind of, you know, using that model, saying, okay, if, you know, if we've done this 3 times, you know, let's go ahead and use that 4th one as, you know, that scale model to see, you know, if it works. And it has so far. You know, we've been open up in Oviedo for about, you know, 2 years now. Things are going pretty well. Like I said, we know our costs, we know what we can do. The problem is that, you know, places like The Joint, and those are national, you know, brands, and they do things a little bit differently than we do. You know, our focus and our niche is on personal injury. And in your state, it's a little bit different when it comes to auto insurance than it is in ours. There's actually only 6 states in the country that have that auto insurance model like we do. So for us to, you know, expand, it would have to be in those 6, you know, states. But most of our focus is going to just take over the Florida area. Right now, we're doing a pretty good job of, you know, kind of housing Central Florida. Our next goal would be going to North Florida, and eventually maybe South Florida.
Yeah, so I'm remembering something you had mentioned to me one time. There's a road in Orlando where there are the most car crashes of anywhere in the United States.
We're right on those roads.
Yeah, so was that strategic to be like, we're going to plant ourselves by where the most car accidents happen?
Yes and no. I mean, you know, to be honest with you, you know, I-4, Interstate 4 is a very, very heavily auto accident, you know, interstate in Central Florida, and that, you know, drives all the way down into South Florida. A lot of the reason why there's so many accidents down here is because everybody flocks from all over the country. Everybody has their different, you know, driving patterns, and, you know, you got the crazy drivers, you got the ones that drive super slow. So, you know, all of those things combined just cause these things to happen. And then there's obviously, you know, I-4 has been under construction for the last 5 years. Things like that, you know, come into play. So with all of those factors, I would say we didn't really strategically open them up next to I-4, but we're close enough, you know, to be able to pull from those areas for sure.
Yeah. So I don't mean that to be like, yeah, if I was opening trying to think of something that I don't know specifically an example of. So let's say it wouldn't be necessarily poor for you to put a chiropractic place by where all the car accidents happen, any worse than it would be for you to put advanced auto parts next to a Chevy dealership, right?
Right. And, you know, to be honest with you, it's, you know, for us to open up a clinic in an area that isn't demographically the area that we need to be in, you know, studies, you know, throughout all of Florida show that, you know, people that go and hire attorneys are, you know, lower income, you know, type people, you know, a lot of times, which I'm just being, you know, frank with you. It's not usually the people that are making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, you know, $400,000 a year. So for us to be in those, you know, those types of areas is actually more lucrative for us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you, and I don't mean to get too into the brass tacks here, but if someone gets in a car accident and they then need to go hire an attorney to, I assume, prosecute the perpetrator of the accident or sue the insurer, or how does that go?
I guess I'll explain. Yeah. So basically how it works is, you know, if somebody gets in a car accident, whether they're at fault or, you know, they get rear-ended by somebody, if they have injuries, their first, you know, course of action is to, you know, go find a doctor, make sure they're okay. They do hire, you know, or not hire, that they come out to an office like ours. You know, we treat those types of patients, you know, we get them better, you know, throughout the course of their treatment. If we find out that the patient isn't going to recover fully, you know, we have to let them know. You know, there's a thing called maximum medical improvement. And if that patient isn't going to get to 100%, we tell them, you know, after we're done treating you, you may have some residual injuries that may affect you throughout the course of your life. And because of that, you may need to hire an attorney, and that attorney is going to help you, get pain and suffering, settlement, money, some lost wages, future medical care. Those are actually really three important things that person's going to need. Imagine a 20-year-old that gets, rear-ended and they can't do the same work that they were doing before. Hiring an attorney is going to protect them in that way. So our documentation and our notes, for those attorneys are very, very valuable in order to get that person what they need to protect themselves down the road. So, and how insurance works for it in Florida is you have what's called personal injury protection.
Mm-hmm.
That insurance is actually, you have up to like $10,000 to be able to utilize it to go to a doctor.
Right.
But that's important to have, and it's required in the state of Florida and a lot of other states. I think your state doesn't have personal injury, but they have what's called bodily injury coverage.
Okay.
Personal injury protects the driver or the person. Bodily injury protects everyone else that was involved. So if I hit you in an accident, my bodily injury would protect you, and my personal injury would protect me until I can go to the doctor. So you're not necessarily suing the other person, you're suing the other person's insurance. If that makes sense.
So let me ask you this, and this will be prior to three different areas I would like to go, and that is, if someone is injured in a self-driving car accident, or two self-driving cars hit each other, and they come to 22 Health with the state laws as they are today, what happens?
So that's a good question. I've actually had a few different lunches with some of the big attorneys in town discussing that. Basically, you're going after the manufacturer of those vehicles at that point. You really can't say that if I'm driving a car and I'm behind you and my self-driving car hits your self-driving car, would I be considered at fault? We don't know that because the law hasn't really been in play yet. It could be down the road that I carry liability insurance for that, if my car malfunctions, or just a lot of different variables. If you're not upkeeping the car the way it's supposed to and you hit somebody, who knows? Until we kind of get to
the latest patch or something. Yeah,
until we get to that point where we, that is kind of common,
Yeah, that's a wild thing. And I think about this stuff sometimes because it will shift so many things. A couple of buddies and I were talking about the future of food. And so there's a guy, Tyler Lorenzen, whom you know, right?
Yeah.
I think you guys met at my wedding, right? Yeah. So, so
Big Ty.
Big Ty. So he was talking about how in the future there will be meats that are, there will be vegetable replacements for meat. And so we were talking today about this thing called the Incredible Burger, or I think it's called the Incredible. No, it's called the Impossible Burger. And they're popping up all over the United States, and they don't like have a meat place or a hamburger or sandwich place called Impossible Burger. It's just like they source the meat substitute to these places. And so one of my friends went and tried it today, and he's like, if you didn't know what this was, you would have no clue at all.
Was a burger it's a vegetable, or
it's just like it's like crab, so like that fake crab that you get, and you're like, well, close enough, and because real crab's too expensive, may as well.
Right.
So he got this hamburger, and he's like, you remember those Costco burgers you get, and they sell them to you in the big pile of frozen meat log. I love that too. And he says it tastes just like that. So I was thinking about this, like, what would that do to the cattle industry? Well, so if you could actually replace the part of the cow that makes the most money, then it stands to reason that either the price of leather has to go through the roof to compensate for the production of the animal and feeding it.
Right.
Or
less cows in production.
Or just way less cows. And so what also kind of rung a bell to me is, so most of the land that's unoccupied by buildings and things in the United States is that's relatively near cities is pasture land and farmland. Mm-hmm. And so most corn is developed to feed the animals. And so if we're not feeding the animals because there's less animals to feed, what does that do to land prices? And if land prices come down, what in turn does that do to house prices? And so
domino effect, yeah, absolutely.
And so when you're describing a self-driving car, then I'm thinking, okay, so self-driving car hits another self-driving car, which this scenario will happen
Yeah.
in, I don't know, 5
Right.
years or something like that. What's your guess? What's your guess on how quick that happens?
I mean, I know they're in, I don't even know. Are they in production right now? I think they are, aren't they?
They are in some specific cities, and I don't know what the actual like constraints on it are, but it's just one of those things. Like this situation will happen, whether it's 3 years or 15 years. It will happen,
Yeah.
and it will disrupt an entire industry that goes around, and all of the laws around it, which the law tends to react much more slowly than technology does.
Yeah, it will. I mean, auto insurance will definitely change if that, if that happens. To what, we really don't know. Is everything going to be, is the liability now going to be held on the manufacturer of the vehicle, or do we no longer have to have auto insurance? I mean, because everything's going to fall under them. So there's a lot of different variables, and in 10 years, I think, I don't know how much one of those cars is going to cost. If it's going to be, $100,000-$200,000, or is it going to be super cheap and now everybody has them, so there's all those different things that need to come into play, I think, before we can really get an idea. But I think I'll be kind of on my way out, I hope, by the time there's, most of those cars are in play,
Are you alluding to an exit strategy, Brian?
I'm working on it,
Okay.
not yet, again, with the laws in Florida, things change every year, so, who knows? And one of the biggest reasons why I started getting into, other ventures was because I want to have a backup, having a young family. It's important to make sure that you have, different sources of revenue, coming in, so that you're not just tied to one thing. If, one thing decides to fall apart,
Yeah,
So,
and things fall apart all the time. And I was, kind of explaining this to some of my peers who think that what they're doing will be perfect forever. And nothing is perfect forever.
things change
Things
overnight.
change, and they're changing faster than they ever have before. So I'm like, all right, guys, let's look at our watches. And in the minute you looked at your watch, some industry was disrupted on some level, and yours is coming up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it just, I look at it as, I moved down here in November 2010, July 2010, and what are we in, 2018 now?
Yeah.
From where I got to in 2010 with like $30 in my bank account, moving down here trying to figure out if I can make it up until where I'm at today, that's only been, that's 8 years. What's another 8 years going to look like? Am I going to go north, or am I going to go south? You know what I mean? So,
yeah, you're in unexplored territory here, man.
Yeah. I mean, this is the first time in my life where I feel like I actually don't have to worry about my financial situation. So last year was still rough, even though we were doing very well. I was paying back all the things that I borrowed and the debts that I have accumulated over that 7 years. So, to be debt free feels really good, but it took a lot of hard work and sacrifice to get there. So
yes. So you're hitting on one of the topics I wanted to go to next. And I do want to talk to Flood and Hyser Realty after this, but like, can you describe the start? So like, I understand you grew up in like a north suburb of Chicago. I'm from like kind of a Western suburb / spent a lot of time in the city, bond trader, the mercantile exchange, all that stuff. So like, we didn't know each other when we were younger. Based on geography, but like, can you tell me about like where you grew up and some of the things that kind of shaped you for this journey that you've been on? And then I know that there were some anecdotes that are worth repeating around like kind of the struggle to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up about an hour and a half, northwest of Chicago in a small town, Belvedere, Illinois. Just a small farm town, country boy type, lived out in the more of the outskirts of the town and everything. There was about, I think, 25,000 people. And I grew up pretty in a good situation. My parents were both married. My dad made, good money. Both of them didn't go to college, but they did very well. Gave my sister and I everything that, we could ever ask for. So the model that they created for me was very easy, for me to say, hey, that's what I want to be when I have a family. I want to be exactly what my dad is. He's the person I've always looked up to. So
there's no higher praise for a dad than that. And I know you got a young guy running around your house like I do.
2-year-old. So if I can, be half the dad my dad was to me, it'll be I'll be very happy about that. But
good for you, man.
yeah, so went to high school, in obviously in Belvedere. Played all the sports. Did a little bit of the golf. I know that's something that you're not a big fan of, but
it's not that I'm not a big fan of it. It's just I can't do it.
You need to start. It takes a lot of time. And it's a difficult sport, and it's a very mental sport. But that's beside the point. So
what are you saying about me, Brian?
Yeah.
What are you saying about my mentality?
No, I started at 15 years old and played every day, I think, for throughout high school,
right.
Rain or shine, and it just takes it's practice. But basketball was the sport that I loved the most. I knew I wasn't going to get to the elite stage, but it got me a scholarship to go to small Division II school up in Joliet, Illinois, which is right outside of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I went there was because of the coach. He was probably the only person that pursued me, at a high level. Everybody else, they throw the letters out and they said, hey, come do a little, tour of our school. They didn't know who I was, just a small little guy from Belvedere. So, he pursued me. After the first year, I redshirted because our team was great, ranked 12th in the country. He decided, to take a job at University of Illinois, Chicago. So I was pretty devastated because he was the reason I came there. But everything is kind of happens for a reason.
Right.
The head coach that came in, Coach Kyle Green, his wife was a chiropractor, and one of the things that he told us from the very beginning is, being an athlete, you need to make sure that you eat well.
Right.
Being up in the upper Chicago area, it's cold. Walking out of practice, you're sweating like crazy, and you walk into like 10-degree weather. That was very common for our players to get sick and have nasty colds. So we had a pretty strict nutrition plan. Every week we would go and get adjusted by his wife. I had no idea what adjustments were at the time, but I knew they felt good because you got a massage after it and whatnot.
Yeah, and then you get the pencil click on you.
Yeah, I had everything, man. The rack and crack. I joke and I tell our patients, but it was a blessing in disguise because it taught me a lot about kind of what I was always interested in, and that was
Mm-hmm.
kind of the human anatomy and being healthy and being proactive, and not the medical paradigm that we're so accustomed to or what we see and read. So it was something I was very interested in. Decided to pursue it. So I did the athletic training route at Lewis University. Went to Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa. I joke and say the only thing that got me through school was in Iowa. Not much to do outside of the walls. So
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, so wanted to kind of get out of the Midwest and decided to take an internship up in or down here in Orlando, and been here ever since. But that was in 2010. Took an internship for about a year and a half.
That's a long internship. Is that standard?
It was actually a 4-month internship, and he decided to hire me on. I was still working on getting the boards and everything. So, he paid me the $500 internship salary, which, when you have student loans, doesn't go far. So
no, it goes nowhere at all.
So that's kind of, one of the biggest things I wanted to tell you was, after that income came in, to pay off those student loans every month, I had like nothing. So I would start, I knew that, I had to get through that, find a good job, get through my boards, get into a position that I knew I could literally afford to live down here. And it took a good while, 3-4 years for me to really, get that, figured out. At one point, I had a letter on my door saying that if I didn't have the money to come up with, I would get evicted. And, it freaks you out when you're down here by yourself and you have no family, So I had that. Eventually I decided to move out of there. I think it was like about 6 months later, and I slept in the car for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks, man. Yeah.
Good
Had
night.
my own fitness membership, so I was able to go to the gym and shower before work.
Oh my goodness.
And I was in and out. I'd stayed at a couple of buddies' places, so it was a struggle. I mean, there was times where I was like, I was in give up mode, and I was saying, hey, I'm going back home. I can do the chiropractic thing back home and try and figure it out. But ended up taking a second job at the Marriott night shift. When all the cars came in from the vacation clubs at night, just
Right.
scanning the IDs, trying to make enough money. So, I was hustling just to stay afloat.
Good for you, man.
Started working at a chiropractic office, doing a lot of marketing, and that's kind of where, things took off. Yeah. Chiropractic's a passion of mine, but the business side of it, the marketing side of it is really what I love to do. So, one day the chiropractor that was there, had a shoulder surgery. He had to be out for a week, had a fill-in doctor come in, and we hit it off. And, that's been my partner now for the last, 5 years. So,
Wow. So that's how that happened. You said like he was filling in. It was like the substitute teacher, and you were like, let's start a school.
He was in the exactly. He was in the same position I was. He's a little older than I. He's about 10 years older than me. He was just doing a lot of fill-in work. Didn't really want to, open the practice and do all the marketing and all the stuff that happens on the outside of the practice. He wanted to treat patients, and it was just a perfect situation for us. And that's what I love. That's what he hated. So it made sense for us. We decided to go and rent a small little 10 by 10 space and in a small PT office, and things blew up from there. So
and the rest is history.
God's
Okay.
good, man.
So the two ends of your story connect right there. So let me ask you this: is if you're sitting at home and you're like 18 or 19 and you're like, yeah, I think I'm interested in preventative health or chiropractic stuff. Like, what's the process? You have to go to a 4-year school and then chiropractic school, and then there's like a test on top of it. How's it look?
Yeah. So, a lot of people don't really, and there's still a lot of people out there that really don't understand chiropractic. They think it's just like a neck and back pain, massage therapy type thing.
Right.
There's a lot of schooling involved. A 4-year college, degree. Usually it's some sort of general science. A lot of the chiropractors go in through pre-med, get all those prerequisites, and then decide to go straight to chiropractic school. And then there's a lot of schools now that are just straight pre-chiropractic degrees. You get a general science degree, and you can then go into your graduate program. So overall, it's 8.5 years. 4 years undergrad, 4.5 years of grad school, and then you have about a 4 to 6 month internship. So, school has been a long, most of my life. Once I was done with it and got the diploma, and I was happy to be done. But there's not much difference when it comes to getting your medical license versus getting your chiropractic license. The schooling is very equivalent. One big difference is we focus more on the nutrition, fitness side. They do a lot of pharmaceutical stuff that we, really aren't accustomed to doing anything. We're not licensed to prescribe drugs. So that's really one of the biggest differences between us.
If you were to make a pitch, because there's a lot of people out there, and I've heard all this stuff over the years, is like, if you were to make a pitch for the validity of the chiropractic practice as opposed to medical practice, because there is no shortage of people saying like, oh my goodness, we have an opioid crisis. We've got, people taking all these drugs. We're giving kids Ritalin and things, and then kids in college are abusing it in different ways, and all these prescription drugs are out there. And so can you make the pitch for chiropractic in the equal and opposite of that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, our country is very reactive, so everybody feels like a pill or a potion, is the way to achieve, optimum health and well-being. And it's really the opposite of that. We are designed to be healthy, and what we put in our body, the stresses that we put on us physically, emotionally, different chemicals like the foods we eat, all of those things affect, how we function on a daily basis. So chiropractors are way more than back pain. Our whole idea is to educate patients on being healthy and well, and living that wellness lifestyle. So it's an alternative. There's pieces of the whole medical puzzle that where we fit in. If somebody injures themselves and has a herniation or a disc rupture and they need to see an ortho, obviously we can't fix that. But if somebody has is severely depressed, there's a doctor for that. So we kind of fit in that entire that model where if somebody's looking to be healthy, they're tired of being on pain meds, antidepressants. They're tired of, taking, ibuprofens every day. There's that option for you, that you can try. And if you find a good chiropractor that's able to kind of educate you on what you should do versus, the pills you should take to mask, I guess, the injury or mask your problem, then, you can be healthy. So,
you're saying something that makes more sense to me right now than I've ever thought of it before. And that is the reactionary policy of most people. And you mentioned the pill or the potion. I think I picked this up from Zelda at a young age, because I'd get the potion and then drink it and then we're good to go. Right.
Right.
Obviously. But it's like, we do that. So we'll eat the horrible thing until it makes us sick or obese. And then we'll exercise, and then we'll stop until it creates problems in the joints, or we'll sit in such a way, or we'll work in such an environment until it creates a back problem.
Right.
And I've never thought of it that way. So it is worth thinking about if you're someone that hasn't necessarily thought about chiropractic.
Well, and think about it this way, the analogy I tell, every single patient, and I'll tell you kind of, I know we're kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent here, but
we got time. This is the internet, Brian.
Exactly. We got all day. The story that I always get reminded of was a patient walks into our office and she fills out her entire, new patient paperwork, right?
Mm-hmm.
On the last page, there's a questionnaire that we always ask them. The first question is, do you consider yourself healthy? And it's just a simple yes and no. And then right underneath that, it says, how many medications are you taking? And please list the medications. So this lady, she decides to fill it out. She circles, yes, I'm healthy. And then she goes on to list 12 different medications that she's taking. And we're not talking, multivitamins. We're talking, back pain, oxycodone. We're talking the, high blood pressure meds, high cholesterol medications, antidepressants, ibuprofen for the headaches. She's on all of these different things. So we decided to, do a full exam. And my biggest thing is just to talk to the patient, and just say, hey, why do you consider yourself healthy? And I'll never forget that she goes, my primary doctor says I'm healthy. And I asked her, I said, if you're healthy, why are you on all these different medications? And it's just like a light bulb, just flipped, or turned on. And she understood it, so when it comes to a person, to be truly healthy, you shouldn't be on high cholesterol meds. You shouldn't be on, ibuprofen every single day for your migraines. You shouldn't be on a high blood pressure medication. You shouldn't be on any of that.
Right.
Because all that does is it's masking the fact that there's a problem. And if you can find out what's causing that problem, that's how you should, try and fix it. So we got her on a strict nutrition plan. She started exercising. She goes back to her doctor 6 months later, and a majority of those things she's able to, to remove from her life. And, she's healthier. She has more energy. And that's not just my practice. That's practices all over the country. People are just prone to going to their primary doctor and taking these medications because it's the easy thing to do.
Right. What would you tell, so one of the things you're describing in this journey to becoming a chiropractor and then shifting into the business part of chiropractic, is that even a word? Chiropractic, is that there was this 8 years of school. And I know, having been a guy that went to school for 3 years, that you can find yourself in a lot of debt after 3 years of school if you don't do things right. So if you were doing it all over again, and you were telling the story that you had student loans, so I'm assuming that's the case.
Oh, it's there still. Yep.
Yeah. So is there any way around that now? Is there a track you can take that could have potentially got you to where you are, but without piling up all that, whatever that dollar amount is? Yeah.
I mean, do I feel like, going through chiropractic school was, taught me a lot? It did, $250,000 worth of, school debt.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I love what I learned. I've been able to kind of educate people, quite a bit on what we do as a profession and help people heal. But, over that 8 years, that definitely has been a shift. in my thinking. So if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably get a business degree
Mm-hmm.
and then read a couple books about nutrition and chiropractic care and exercise and ways of dealing with stress, because I feel like it would have been a little bit cheaper.
Okay.
But
Interesting.
yeah, so I mean, I obviously don't any future chiropractors that are reading this, or watching this. I hope that doesn't deter you from doing it, because you can make that money pretty easy if you do things right. So.
Mm-hmm.
With me, it just took 7 years of really trying to figure it out. So yeah, before
Okay.
I made it all back.
I hear you, man. So I love that. And then because one of the things we talk about on this podcast, and I've got 7 nieces and nephews that are all going to be coming into the college foray in the next, some like in 1 year and then some in like 10 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And I am like really hoping that no one goes to a 4-year school, because I think that that's a great way to rack up a ton of debt and not get the payoff.
I said the same thing to my wife. I said, if Cameron can go to some internet-based school and get a degree, who cares? I mean, I get that, a lot. I don't even know if, when I, interview people, I don't look at where they went to school.
Mm-hmm.
I had that communication, face-to-face interview, and I think that's a big part to me.
Mm-hmm.
I get you have to have a background and whatnot, but what's the difference between going to Northwestern and spending $45,000 a year versus going to a community college? You might have the same. I mean, I'm sure it's a little bit different of an education, but I mean, how different can it be?
Well, I'm sure Northwestern is quite a bit better, but it doesn't mean that you're not at the same plateau when you get done, right?
Yeah.
And they're children anyways. So it's like, and this is the biggest thing I look for when I'm making hiring decisions, if you're ever in an interview with me, make a notation for this spot, is I'm looking for people that are intellectually curious. And the way to find that out is, what are they reading on their own time? What are they learning about on their own time? Because if I'm in accounting 404 in college, like I'm going to accounting 404 so that I can pass the test, so I can get a piece of paper from you. I'm not learning anything about alternative risk management that could actually be useful to me in this caveat of a business I think might come into play later. So if you can sit down and say, yeah, I'm actually learning about, I'm in software, so let's say like, I'm spending a lot of time learning about the Internet of Things and how that will change the world, and how, some of it's already here. And, I just want to understand how that's going to play. And so to me, that's better than, oh yeah, I spent 900 years at Yale.
Yeah, exactly.
First, 900 years, you must be a vampire. You're hired. Exactly.
I agree with you, man. I think, in the next, I'm hoping, colleges start to become less common, and it becomes more either like an internet-based, idea, or something where somebody can, I don't know, get an education. I just think it's getting ridiculous, compared to when my parents were in school. I talked to, my partner, Chris, and he went through Palmer, 10 years before I did, and he racked up, I think it was like $25,000 in student loan debt. And that was the full debt. He didn't work, he didn't do anything. And, 10 years later, it's, almost 200 grand.
Right.
So I think it's just crazy how, people are taking, schools are taking advantage of these kids,
Yeah. It's one of the biggest problems we have in the States today, is that it's so expensive to be seen as competent, and it costs so much to be seen as competent that you could have just been competent and got there anyways. So I think there's that whole space is ripe for a shakeup. So we talked about industries getting, I'm looking for the term here, disrupted.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's been ripe for a long time. I'm not sure that there's, I'm not sure. I think the bureaucracy in that space will be difficult to take down, and there will be a lot of kicking and screaming on the way. But as a consumer in the market right now, you have the choice to look at how you want to do that anyway. So just a side note.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think, I don't know, I know it's north of 50%, but I don't know the exact percentage, but a majority of people that graduate with their degree aren't even working in the same field.
Right.
So it's just crazy, but all in all, if Cameron can go, if my son can go to a small little JUCO school for a few years and get his degree as cheap as possible, that's what I would always recommend people.
Yeah, and we'll get there around the same times. We'll plan that out together.
Yeah, there you go.
So
start saving now, parents.
Right. Yeah. So, one of the other things I thought would be really interesting to dive into with you is that, so you've got this story that starts out in north of Chicago in a small town. You go play basketball. You've got a lot of times on this podcast, we'll talk about how sports kind of builds character and it teaches you how to take a couple L's before you get the W.
Oh, yeah. Had many of those.
And I know you well enough to know that that's the case in your house. So what it brings me to is this point that you're at right now, where you've got the 4 locations of 22 Health, and it's taught you a few things in the process that can extrapolate even with, like, if you just showed me your circumstances and you've got 4 locations of a independently owned chiropractic business, I would say, okay, so this guy has learned how to navigate the real estate market, because each time you take out a new lease, you're scaling out your entire business. You're taking on all that new overhead. You have to know the numbers when you do that. And by virtue of the fact that there was a 3rd and a 4th, it was done properly. So you've prepared yourself to enter the real estate foray.
Right.
So can you describe what Hyser Realty is doing now?
Yeah. So, when Chris and I decided after our second location, we were going to kind of step away from the day-to-day stuff, we decided to hire a team.
Mm-hmm.
We hired some billing, people. We hired some, compliance directors. We hired some marketing people. So our role now with 22 Health is more of a, kind of advisory. We're kind of, standing over them, making sure everything's running smoothly, monthly meetings, that kind of thing. So, that's kind of what's happening with 22 Health now. So because of that, it's opened up, my time to kind of dive into other things. And you're right. I learned real estate kind of by accident, because of, the 4 different locations that we opened up. I started to understand, the different areas in town, what values are, price per square foot for different commercial buildings, residential, the whole deal. So, I kind of was self-taught in that respect, but decided, with being home too many hours of the day, Laura said, "Hey, if you could do something."
Laura's your wife.
Yes, Laura's my wife. And I was getting bored, and I like to be busy, I like to be doing things. So I decided to, dive into getting my real estate license. Wasn't very difficult, by the way. And I highly recommend to anybody that's going to purchase a property, or invest in something. That 3% goes a long way.
Yes.
But anyway, so I, dived into the Hyser Realty. I do mostly residential. Like, I don't really specialize in buyer or seller. So it really, it's not much different than 22 Health. It's, customer, experience driven business. If you can relate well to people and you do things right and you can communicate, that's really all real estate's about. People hire other people not because, they're going to get you a lower price. The prices are set based on the market, so if you can relate well to somebody, communicate well with somebody, and you do things the right way, you could buy and sell tons of houses for them. And it's a good side income source for us. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you go down the residential route, like, that's the lowest barrier of entry in terms of real estate, right?
Yeah, I mean, because our marketing is, I spend $1,000-$2,000 a month on our marketing. It doesn't really require a lot, from me. The way it is in Florida, and I'm not sure how it is in other states, but you have to have your sales agent license for 2 years before you can become a broker, and that's the future plan, is more management of that as well. So I could hire agents like myself that are driven, motivated, kind of that do the work for me. and I kind of just oversee it. So that's the overall vision.
And then you could start a TV show on E!
Yeah, $1 million listings Orlando, right? So,
there's revenue there too, Brian.
gosh, to be honest with you, that show is just so inaccurate. Yeah, it doesn't go the way that people think it should. It is on TV.
I've seen snippets of it, and it just it's right in E's train of logic for all shows. It doesn't need to be real. Let's just put it on TV.
$1.2 million, townhouses. There's maybe 3 of them here in Orlando. A lot of what we focus on is homes between 200 and 500,000. And if you get a $600,000 or $700,000 house, it's like, hey, this is a big time. So
yeah.
And I mean, there's real estate agents that are killing it doing that. But for us, we kind of specialize in that lower, income, or not lower income, but lower house value, $100,000. And there's a lot of issues with that. So what you see on TV, you can get all the way close to a deal, and you can find out that they don't have enough reserves, or they can't get financing. So there's a lot of time that you can invest in somebody and not even get the deal done. So
right.
There's a lot of ebbs and flows with this real estate business.
Yeah. So you and I, and I guess this is maybe TMI for the audience. You and I had looked at owning some Papa John's, and I've talked about my Papa John's exploration.
Waiting for that. I'm still wanting to do that.
Good night. And so the story is, if you don't know it, Jerry Jones owns the rights for Papa John's from Dallas to south of Austin over to Bastrop, which is about halfway to Houston, which is like a massive chunk of land.
Yeah.
And you don't want to own a Papa John's in Bastrop because it burns down every couple of years, apparently. And I've been here for 5 years, and I think it's burned down twice.
Oh, jeez.
So pretty wild thing. But yeah, so this could lead itself into more commercial plays, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's, the goal is, like I said, is, about a year and a half, probably a year, to get my broker's license, and then, dive into more real estate. That's really where the money is. You're talking, $1 million properties, big strip plazas, that's where, majority of real estate agents in the commercial side make their money. So, yeah. And on top of that, the Hyser Realty is investments down the road, so if we ever decided to jump on the Papa John's bandwagon, then be part of it,
Well, if Jerry doesn't cough up some territory, we're going to Little Caesars.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know what it is in here in Orlando. I know I have one here in Lake Mary that's pretty close, but
yeah,
that's a pretty hot spot. The place is always busy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, and then the other one I wanted to talk about, so this is your third kind of play is flood. Yeah. And so you have told me this story that involves you going to college to be a chiropractor, going through the whole slog of all that, creating a 4-location chiropractic business, and then going to the real estate market. But then there's something else you learned on accident, which is marketing. Yeah. So tell me about Flood, and what is this? Because it's brand spanking new from what I understand, right?
Jeez, it's 2 weeks old, really. A lot of this, everything that we've been doing, well, I would say, we've been working on it for about 4 to 5 months now, but, to really start saying we're trying to sell it, it's about 2 weeks old. So, what Flood is the idea was to, to try and help small businesses like ours, chiropractors, other, small primary doctors, optometrists,
right.
Bail bonds, small fitness centers, those privately owned businesses try and become the dominator of the market, if that makes any sense. So, this was, again, by accident, so somebody reached out to us saying they have, an opportunity, a software that they're in the early stages of developing, and they wanted to kind of team up with, with me and my partner, and try and, get us to sell the product. So what Flood is, it's actually a bunch of microsites. So businesses like ours, so we actually did it for 22 Health, and it's been, pretty successful over the last few months, in generating those unattached patients that we talked about.
So what is an unattached patient? Just for the record. Okay. So try not to hit me with too much jargon that you guys are good at and I'm not.
So unattached, in our field, in the auto accident industry, is a patient that comes to our office that's been in an auto accident that does not have an attorney. So
okay.
And not everybody needs an attorney, but if there is that situation where that person is in a situation where they may have future medical bills down the road, or they're not going to recover fully, we ended up recommending an attorney. An attorney in return will, obviously recommend, coming to our practice. So it's kind of, that's how we build our practice is by doing that. So those patients that come into our practice that don't have an attorney are more valuable to us than somebody that has an attorney already. So when we talk about in our marketing, we need to reach out to those people that don't have an attorney, that have been in an injury or been in an auto accident. Those are the ones that we're looking for. So our marketing is very tailored towards that. So they approached us with the idea and the concept that a pay-per-click in the auto accident injury field is like $85 every single time somebody clicks on it. It's really expensive.
You could put your competitors out of business with a little bit of a DDoS.
For us little chiropractors, attorneys spend millions of dollars every month on generating this business.
Wow, that's wild. $80 I can't get over that.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example. Morgan & Morgan, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, but he's the largest personal injury attorney in the country.
Okay.
They spend $1.3 million a month just on online advertising, just for those patients. That's us, little guys that are spending, maybe $5,000, $6,000 a month. We're not going to get any traction there. So, so because of that pay-per-click cost, we decided to, develop this, the software that builds all of these microsites. When I mean micro, I'm not saying just a landing page. It's like 8, 9 different pages within the website that are all based on the keywords that are relevant in our industry. So chiropractic, auto accident, altamont.com. So what we designed was 500 keyword websites that we can organically just push into, through Google. And we've been seeing a return on those, pretty consistently over the last month and a half. So for our cost of $3,900, we got 500 websites, that people are clicking on a daily basis. And it's
just resolving to your host.
Yeah, and we're just paying it monthly versus every single time somebody clicks, $87, you can get what? I don't even know what's the math there. Maybe 100 clicks? Not even that, I don't know. So, so it's funny. There's we signed on this doctor in Arizona, in Scottsdale, his entire first 3 pages, he's on there like 15 times because of all the different keywords that we've developed with him. So, it's perfect for really any industry. It doesn't have to be chiropractors, auto accidents. It's going to be, like I said, doctors, small little fitness gyms, bail bonds. So there's a bunch of different opportunities for these small businesses to really kind of flood the market. And that's actually where the name came up with is, we spell it a little differently, but
FLUD.
Yeah.
Was FLOOD taken?
Oh, no, it wasn't. It just didn't look as good,
It's not taken? I would assume it would definitely be taken.
Oh, flood.com? Yeah, it is. It's definitely taken. But we wanted something that was just a little different,
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, I can't spell, so maybe
It brands better.
I think it looks better anyways.
Yeah, so there's this thing going on in kind of the world of tech right now where companies are using .io at the end of their email or their web addresses now because there's been trolls running over all the domain addresses for so many years. If you pick any 3 letters of the alphabet and you pin them together, they're taken. They've been taken since 1995 kind of thing.
Yep.
So I have well, let's just say, like, if you've ever worked for a company that has a funny name, like I sort of Tableau software, we'll just use that one. No one knows what that means. And it's like, it's cryptic, it's French. And the CEO's rationale for why he named the company Tableau is he's like, you ever tried to name a company?
Yeah.
Everything's taken.
Yeah, exactly.
It's absolutely brutal. I was looking at a couple legal setups for a shell structure, and you have to pay like $900 to have an attorney do a search in all 50 states to see if anyone's DBA, doing business as, whatever
really?
that. Yeah, it's brutal, man. And so it's
Yeah.
just like, you got to hop over all these hurdles. And I had these guys from Tableau Help in, they're one of the sponsors of the podcast. They named their company Zuar, Zuar. It's not a word that shows up in any dictionary, and it's untaken. So,
well, and that's the thing is, who cares what your name is? You're
right.
building your brand. Like Starbucks, for example. Like, if you didn't know what Starbucks was, what's Starbucks? I mean, maybe you do, but I don't. I know it as a coffee, place.
Right.
But it's Starbucks. And what's that have to do with coffee? I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with it. I don't know.
You hear they closed 150 stores today?
Did they really?
Yeah.
There was something I remember reading about a month ago that was going on with it, but I don't know why.
They got all kinds of things going on. They're everywhere. They're in the midst of everything that goes on because they're everywhere, right? If something's going on, there's a Starbucks within 3 miles, right?
Right. Well, didn't they just team up with? I know they teamed up with Target, didn't they? And they're in most Targets now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked you this: if you, and you kind of hit on this in some extent before, which is to say, like, if the laws change or technology changes, then you have to go to something else. You have to pivot out of what you're doing in theory.
Right.
And so the ultimate occurrence of this would be is if I took your chiropractic business, your real estate business, your online marketing company, all taken away from you, and I drop you and your family out in I want to say Ocala. That's in Florida, right?
Yeah, that's out there though.
Yeah, so
not much
perfect. And you get a tent, and so and you get the clothes that you're wearing right now.
Ooh, okay, good.
Yeah, so there's there's that, and then you got to put all the pieces together. What do you do?
So which of those three companies would I take, or just where would I?
I get all of them. You have to start from scratch, and you've got obviously you've got your school debt, and you've got mouths to feed, and things like that. What's your plan of action?
Oh, that's tough. I mean,
and you're in Ocala, which is
I'm in Ocala. I mean, it would have to obviously do something with marketing. That I think that's my forte. In all the three businesses I have, marketing has always been, what's driven these to success. I don't know, man. Ocala, you're really putting me out there.
Well, is the first move to get on a Greyhound or what?
I would probably come back to Orlando. Do I have internet?
No, but I'm sure somewhere in Ocala has internet.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, if you took all three of those, man, dude, I don't know. I'd be in the books trying to figure out what the next move would be. It'd be tough, I mean, because to be honest with you, everything that I've done and I've created has been, pretty much, by accident. I wanted to go into pre-med, met my coach's wife, who was a chiropractor, got into real estate because I started understanding kind of the real estate world of opening up, multiple chiropractic businesses, and then this whole flood thing came about because we're trying to expand into more markets. So if you threw me out there, I'm sure I'd figure it out. I'd start at McDonald's or something probably.
Okay, way to scrap. Okay, there's step one.
Got to make some money, I don't know, go work at Target or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then start figuring it out,
All right. Well, I'm going to let you off the hook with that answer. But when you come down to Austin,
I don't know. I got to figure out another answer.
I expect a much more complete answer. And it's funny that because I asked that question.
I guess
I ask that question all the time, and so it's so wild how different people answer that question differently. So for me, I take the same tactical approach that you do, right? So it's like, okay, so if all my stuff is gone and I have responsibilities to take care of right now, first thing I do is I go get a night shift job somewhere to just like get dollars rolling in the door, however small they are, because one is much, much better than zero. And then I would try to get an entry-level sales job somewhere doing anything, or I would wait tables until I got it. And then I would shift these things around until I only had to be doing one thing. And then once I do the one thing really well, I do multiple things like you're
Yeah.
doing right now. So there's a little bit of method to the madness.
And I can't do the 9 to 5, man. I mean, I'd do it if I had to, you know. I mean, there's no other opportunity. You know, if I was starting, like you said, if I was starting from the ground up and I had to work a 9 to 5, I would. But, you know, I just don't feel like I'm programmed to do that. I do better when my son's sleeping, my wife's still in bed, from 4 in the morning to 7, and then from 8 p.m. to 1 or 2 in the morning. Like I function better. I get a lot more done that way. Yeah. So the whole 9 to 5 thing just doesn't make sense for me. You know,
was it always that way, or is that something that came around when kid shows up? Because that's how it was for me. Like I used to be a night owl, and I would do my high productive hours would be from like 9 p.m. till like 1 a.m. And now they flip-flopped, and now they're like 4:30 to like 7:30.
Well, I just think being a business owner, it's hard to shut it off. You know, you're done with your day-to-day stuff. You come home, you hang out with the family for a while. You know, wife decides to put kid to bed, and then you just go back to doing finishing the rest of your day. And my mind's constantly running. And my wife jokes and tells me that when we were starting 22 Health, I would get up at like 1 in the morning because I had an idea, and I was up the rest of the night. Just kind of just getting these things written down, and that kind of thing. So. Has it always been that way? No, but I do think I get a lot more done.
Right.
But
yeah, well, perfect, man. So one of the things that we've got to do, and so I had you booked to come to Austin to do this, and then we had some change in plans. So you're still not off the hook.
I don't have a house right now, so it's hard.
You're between houses. I get that, and you're excused for this absence, but you're not out of the class. So you have to come back down here later, and we'll see what how things are going, and then what new things you've spun off of that. So thanks for coming on, man. I enjoyed the time, and great story, and we'll pick it up again later.